How fast you turn those pedals is an important aspect of your riding to get right, especially when it comes to keeping fresher in the latter stages of a ride. And in this respect, is it better to spin your legs to win or potentially grind it out? Today we're hoping to find out just that. We set up a little experiment. It's time some GCN does science. That's Duracell giraffe mode. We've covered whether it is best to spin those pedals fast or turn them slowly a few times already here on the channel. And if you've missed those videos, please do check them out in the link in the description below. But today we're coming at things from a different angle. Endurance is of course an important part of anyone's riding. In the pro peloton, this is especially true, being able to feel fresher for longer and put down big numbers at the end of a race. But no matter your level or your goal from riding, being able to feel fresher at the end of a ride is going to make things more enjoyable. Something called fatigue resistance measures our ability to do just that. Keep putting down the power after hours and hours of riding. Of course, it's great if you can sprint out the door, put down big numbers straight away, but if you begin to fade later on in the ride, all those initial gains are going to be lost, potentially when it matters most. Now, of course, there's other factors which play a crucial role here, proper fueling and training, but could our riding style also help? It's thought that being able to ride at a high cadence allows you to stay fresher for longer, minimizing muscle stress. Whereas if you grind out your gears riding at an excessively low cadence, then you reduce your fatigue resistance, tiring quicker. Now, this is something that is echoed by what I was told when I was racing, to always try and maintain a higher cadence in the first half of a race so you can stay fresher for latter proceedings that matters most. But is this actually true? Could a simple change in our technique and pedaling style really make us feel stronger at the end of a ride? To try and find out, we designed a little experiment. So recently, whilst out riding, I performed a max 5-minute test, going as hard as I could. And I managed to average 400 watts, 161 beats per minute heart rate. I then rode for an hour at around 90% of my FTP. Pretty solid effort, which gave a healthy dose of fatigue to the legs. There was a catch though, because on this effort, I was limited to only riding at 60 RPM, a considerably lower cadence than I'm used to. I then repeated that 5 minutes, all out effort, and averaged 350 watts and 149 beats per minute heart rate. This is a condensed version of a training workout many pro teams use to assess their riders' ability to put down the power long into the latter stages of a race. Really key metric if you want to do well and you want to cross that finish line first, but still something that many of us should pay attention to if we want to be able to continue riding well long into a ride. It's also actually a key difference between top amateur level riders and professionals, because whilst both can put down serious power numbers, it's the difference between putting those power numbers down at the start of a ride and at the end that sets them apart. Those top level pros really do have little difference when they're putting down those numbers with huge fatigue in the legs. Back to my own effort, I actually had a drop off in power of 14%. And it's thought that anywhere between 5 and 8% is a good level of fatigue resistance. Top level GC riders, those who are winning the likes of the Tour de France, barely notice a difference between the start and the end after a whopping 5 or 6 hours in the saddle. It's pretty remarkable. So a considerable drop off in power after a solid bulk of work at low cadence. Today though, I'm repeating that very same ride. Same max effort, same 1 hour effort in between the efforts, but I'm gonna go for high cadence, so 30% higher than usual at around 105 RPM before I then repeat that max effort and see what the difference in power may be. I'm interested to see if there'll be any improvements. I think there will be. Proof's gonna be in the pudding though. Time to get cracking. 5-minute max effort, let's do it. Oh, it's gonna hurt the legs. Right then, I'll give it a whirl. Oh, 5-minute test done. Always hurts, but it is in the bank. Not gonna look at the results now though, because ahead of me is an hour solid riding, spinning the legs pretty fast. 105 revolutions per minute, I'm gonna try and average. So whilst I'm settling into my hour of high cadence, it must be said, I did suffer a little during the low cadence effort I completed in comparison. It's interesting because there are studies out there that point to the fact that when you're riding at a lower cadence, you actually have lower oxygen uptake, lower ventilation and heart rates, lower lactate levels, and lower levels of perceived exertion. So how hard the effort actually feels at a certain intensity level when you compare that to efforts done at a high cadence. Like a Duracell bunny. This study examining pro riders actually found their preferred cadence on the flat was around 90 revolutions per minute, whereas on longer climbs in the mountains it would drop down to around 70 revolutions per minute. I'm going either side of that, I'm going to both extremes, so it's going to be interesting to see what that might show. I'm like a little Mini Cooper, well, a big Mini Cooper that's kind of reached its limit. It's just first impressions and comparisons, the high cadence is definitely easier, but I'm having to focus so much more. Whilst I continue to spin away, there are a few tips that you can employ to improve your fatigue resistance and endurance away from your pedaling technique. First up, try to complete longer rides. So sometimes easier said than done. Also, if you are doing specific intervals in a ride, try to complete them at the end rather than the beginning of a spin. And over the weeks, gradually ramp up the amount of riding or work you put in before starting those intervals. Also, work on pacing your rides so you finish stronger than you started. Instead of smashing it out of the blocks, focus on riding tempo and putting down your better efforts at the end of a ride. And finally, fuel up. Very important. Make sure your nutrition strategy is right. Riding on low carbs is going to be the #1 reason your power drops off later in a ride. Oh, jeepers. I'm halfway through this mad experiment. I've got to say, I thought today would be the easiest in the high cadence, but actually, I think I'm going to say it's harder. But then in a strange way, my legs feel less fatigued. So obviously, there is some benefit to it, but it's just more work. That's Duracell giraffe mode. Whew. It's been an hour spent in fast forward. I'm coming to the end of it. The hour's completed, the work is done. The cadence has relatively been held as high as possible. Now, it's time to repeat that 5-minute max effort. See what sort of power I can manage. And we're off. Legs feel like spaghetti. I'm managing to kind of dig deep. 1 minute to go. Feel like I need to sit on the ground for a bit and not think about my leg speed. Oh, my muscles are shot. Absolutely shot. Right, I've been busy crunching the numbers from both rides, and it's quite interesting actually delving into the data. So when I did that same effort with low cadence, that full 5-minute max effort, low cadence ride for an hour, 5 minutes max effort, my power dropped off by 14%, which is quite a big difference. When I repeated it with the high cadence in between those two efforts, there was only a 9% drop off. So it's quite a difference actually. It still drops off, but I do manage to save things. And I think the conclusion you can draw from that is that cadence really does have quite a big impact on your effort level and what you're able to put out towards the end of a ride. I wouldn't advocate for just trying to spin really high all the time. I think what you need to be aware of is potentially when you lose concentration, you dip into that low cadence, you find yourself grinding the gears for long periods. I do believe that can really tax your legs. And if you can recognize that, maybe ride more at your preferred cadence level, just notch things up a bit, then potentially you're going to save yourself quite a bit of energy, which you could use later in the ride. And those high cadence efforts, they have their place too, but not for one massive block. I think it's those moments when you're riding a bit easier, you can afford to spin the legs, you can get your rhythm. And it's about that balance, I think, over the whole ride and being able to switch between the two with a bit more ease. So it can be quite valuable to train in both cadence zones. Of course, these experiments weren't super scientific. There's plenty of other factors which had an impact on my effort, including my fitness from day to day. The weather was different between the 2 days. A lot of it's down to my own feeling, and that low cadence effort, it was so hard to go from that and then do that max effort. It just felt like I was so sluggish. It was really hard to get myself going again. Whereas when I switched from the high cadence to that max effort, it was like straight away, boom, ready to rumble. Which is something I definitely felt when I was racing as well. I always tried to kind of have that high cadence if I could, because when you did need to go for that max effort, I felt like I was more able to just notch straight into that zone and be right there. Whereas when on those times, mainly in cobbled races, you find yourself in quite a low cadence, and it can be so hard to kind of get yourself going again and go into those real high intensity efforts. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Do you prefer to ride at a low cadence or a high cadence? Which one do you think gives you the most fatigue towards the end of a ride? Let me know, it'd be interesting to hear everyone's thoughts. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.